The rain hammered against the concrete walls of the abandoned warehouse like bullets from heaven. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos pressed her eye against the scope of her Barrett M82 sniper rifle, watching the enemy convoy through the downpour. Her hands were steady despite the cold that had seeped into her bones after 12 hours in position. Dragon 6, this is Overwatch, she whispered into her radio. Convoy is 2 clicks out. 3 vehicles, estimated 15 hostiles. I have clear shots on the lead vehicle. Static crackled back through her earpiece. Then silence. Dragon 6, do you copy? Maria adjusted her position slightly. Rainwater dripping from the brim of her tactical cap. The warehouse roof had more holes than Swiss cheese, and she had been lying in puddles for most of the night. Still nothing. Something was wrong. Dragon 6 was her extraction team, led by Captain Richards. They should have been maintaining constant communication during this high-value target elimination mission. The convoy below contained a notorious arms dealer who had been selling weapons to insurgents throughout the region. Maria had been tracking this target for 3 weeks, gathering intelligence and waiting for the perfect moment. Tonight was supposed to be clean and simple. Take the shot, confirm the kill, and extract within 30 minutes. She lined up her crosshairs on the lead vehicle as it approached the kill zone. Through her scope, she could see the target clearly now, a heavy-set man in expensive clothes, completely unaware that death was watching him from 800 meters away. Dragon 6, Overwatch is going hot, she transmitted, making the decision to proceed despite the communication breakdown. The mission was too important to abort now. The rifle bucked against her shoulder as she squeezed the trigger. The .50 caliber round punched through the vehicle's windshield, and the convoy immediately erupted into chaos. Vehicles swerved, men scrambled for cover, and automatic weapons fire lit up the night. Target down, Maria reported into her radio. Dragon 6, I need immediate extraction. My position is compromised. The response that came back made her blood run cold. Overwatch, this is Dragon Actual, came a voice she didn't recognize. Dragon 6 is not available for extraction. Mission parameters have changed. You are to hold position and await further orders. Negative. Dragon Actual. My position is blown. I have approximately 20 hostiles moving on my location. I need extraction now. Overwatch. You are ordered to maintain position. Dragon 6 has been reassigned to a higher priority mission. Maria couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had just eliminated a high-value target, and now her own command was leaving her stranded in hostile territory. Through her scope, she could see enemy fighters spreading out below, some pointing up toward the warehouse where muzzle flash had given away her position. Dragon Actual. I am a United States Marine with 12 years of service. I have never failed a mission, and I am not about to start now. But I need extraction immediately, or I will be overrun. Overwatch, maintain radio silence. That is a direct order. The radio went dead. Maria stared at her communications device in disbelief. In 12 years of military service, through 4 combat deployments, she had never been abandoned by her own forces. She had saved countless lives with her precise shooting, had been decorated for valor multiple times, and had never questioned an order until this moment. The sound of boots on metal stairs echoed through the warehouse below. They had found the entrance, moving quickly but quietly. Maria began breaking down her rifle and packing her gear. Years of training had taught her to always have an escape plan. Even when command assured her it wouldn't be needed, she had identified 3 possible exit routes during her initial reconnaissance of the building. The primary route was through the roof access ladder on the east side of the building. The secondary route was through a loading dock that connected to the storm drain system. The tertiary route was through a window on the 2nd floor that overlooked an alley. Voices echoed from below, growing closer. They were speaking in the local dialect, and from what Maria could understand, they knew exactly what they were looking for. Someone had tipped them off about the sniper's nest. She made her way toward the roof access, moving like a ghost through the shadows of the warehouse. Her gear was packed efficiently in her tactical backpack, and her sidearm was ready for close-quarters combat if necessary. As she reached the ladder, the warehouse lights suddenly blazed to life. Someone had found the electrical panel. "There!" a voice shouted in accented English. On the roof, automatic weapons fire erupted below her, bullets pinging off the metal ladder and concrete walls. Maria moved faster, climbing toward the roof access hatch. Just as she pushed through to the outside, she felt a sharp pain in her left shoulder. One of the rounds had found its mark. The rain was coming down even harder now, turning the warehouse roof into a treacherous maze of slippery surfaces and hidden obstacles. Maria could hear her pursuers climbing up behind her as she sprinted toward the edge of the building. Without hesitation, she leaped across the narrow alley to the adjacent building, landing hard on her injured shoulder. Pain shot through her entire left side, but she forced herself to keep moving. Behind her, more gunfire erupted as the enemy fighters reached the roof. For the next 6 hours, Maria played a deadly game of cat and mouse through the rain-soaked city. She moved through storm drains, abandoned buildings, and narrow alleys, always staying one step ahead of the search teams that seemed to know exactly where to look for her. As dawn approached, she finally found temporary shelter in the basement of a bombed-out school. Her shoulder wound had stopped bleeding, but she was exhausted, cold, and completely alone in hostile territory. Her radio remained silent despite repeated attempts to contact any friendly forces. Sitting in the darkness, Maria began to piece together what had happened. The precision of the enemy response, the sudden change in mission parameters, the convenient reassignment of her extraction team. Someone had sold her out. Someone in her own command structure had decided she was expendable. The realization hit her like a physical blow. After 12 years of faithful service, after countless missions where she had risked her life for her country and her fellow Marines, she had been discarded like a broken tool. But Maria Santos was not the type of person who stayed down when knocked down. As she cleaned and bandaged her wound using supplies from her medical kit, she began planning her next move. She would survive this betrayal, and she would find out who was responsible. The rain continued to pour down outside, washing away the blood and evidence of the night's events. But it could not wash away Maria's determination to survive and seek justice for what had been done to her. In the distance, she could hear the sound of helicopters conducting search patterns. Whether they were looking to rescue her or finish the job, she couldn't be sure. What she did know was that she could trust no one except herself from this moment forward. Maria Santos, one of the most decorated snipers in Marine Corps history, had been abandoned in the rain. But she was far from finished. The people who had betrayed her had made a critical error in judgment. They had underestimated her will to survive and her capacity for justice. As she settled in to wait for nightfall before making her next move, Maria made herself a promise. She would find her way home. She would discover the truth about her abandonment. And she would make sure that those responsible would pay for their betrayal. The rain hammered against the broken windows above her head, but Maria Santos was no longer afraid. She was angry, and that anger would fuel her survival and eventual return to extract her own form of justice. 3 years had passed since that rainy night when Maria Santos learned the bitter lesson that loyalty was not always a two-way street. 3 years of living off the grid, moving from country to country, taking private contracts that kept her skills sharp while she slowly pieced together the conspiracy that had nearly cost her life. Maria now went by the name Elena Rodriguez, and she looked nothing like the Marine sniper who had been abandoned in that warehouse. Her hair was shorter and darker. Her face bore carefully applied scars that changed her appearance, and her body language had shifted from military precision to the fluid confidence of someone who had learned to survive in the shadows. She was sitting in a small cafe in Prague, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, when the news report caught her attention. The television above the bar was showing footage of a military ceremony in Washington. Captain Derek Richards, the man who had been commanding Dragon 6 the night of her abandonment, was being promoted to colonel. Decorated officer receives promotion after successful counter-terrorism operations, the news anchor was saying. Colonel Richards has been credited with eliminating several high-value targets and disrupting arms-dealing networks throughout Eastern Europe. Maria's jaw tightened. The arms dealer she had killed that night had been Richardson's high-value target, his disrupted network. He was taking credit for her work while she had been declared killed in action. Her family told she had died serving her country. Her encrypted phone vibrated with a text message. Only 3 people in the world had this number, and 2 of them were arms dealers who occasionally hired her services. The third was Marcus Webb, a former Navy SEAL who had helped her disappear after she managed to escape that hostile territory 3 years ago. The message was simple. Job offer. Your specialty required. High pay. Interested? Job offer. Offer. Maria typed back. Details. Private military contractor needs precision elimination specialist for complex operation. Client pays 7 figures for successful completion. Meet me in Vienna tomorrow if interested. Usual place. 7 figures meant this was no ordinary contract. Maria had been living comfortably on smaller jobs. But this kind of money suggested either extreme danger or extreme importance. Possibly both. The next evening, she found herself in a dimly lit restaurant in Vienna's Old Quarter, sitting across from Marcus Webb. The former SEAL looked older than his 45 years. With gray streaking through his beard and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many close calls in too many foreign countries. You look good, Elena, he said, using her assumed name even though they were alone. Old habits died hard in their line of work. You look like hell, Marcus. What's the job? Marcus slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a photograph of a man in an expensive suit standing next to a military vehicle. Maria recognized him immediately, and her blood turned to ice. Colonel Derek Richards, Marcus said quietly. He's been selling military intelligence to the highest bidder for the past 5 years. The client has evidence that Richards was responsible for the deaths of at least 30 American servicemen and women, including the members of several special operations teams. Who's the client? Maria asked, though she suspected she already knew. Someone very high up in the intelligence community, someone who has been tracking Richards for years, but can't move against him through official channels, because Richards has too many connections and too much protection. Maria stared at the photograph of the man who had left her to die. The irony was perfect. Richards had betrayed her and taken credit for her work. And now someone was offering her $7 million to take him out. There's more, Marcus continued. Richards isn't working alone. He's part of a network that includes defense contractors, foreign intelligence services, and corrupt military officials. Taking him out will send a message, but it will also paint a target on your back that will never go away. Where and when? Maria asked without hesitation. Next month. Richards is scheduled to attend a NATO conference in Switzerland. High security, lots of witnesses, extremely difficult shot. The client wants it to look like natural causes or an accident. No martyrdom for this one. Maria spent the next 3 weeks preparing for the most challenging contract of her career. She studied Richard's schedule, his habits, his security arrangements, and his medical records that the mysterious client had somehow obtained. She learned that he had a severe allergy to shellfish that required him to carry an EpiPen at all times. The NATO conference was being held at a luxury resort in the Swiss Alps. Maria arrived 2 days early, posing as a freelance journalist covering the conference for a small American magazine. Her credentials were perfect forgeries, and her cover story was solid enough to withstand casual scrutiny. She spent those 2 days mapping the resort, identifying security protocols, and observing the patterns of the various delegations. Richards was staying in a luxury suite on the top floor, with 2 bodyguards rotating in 12-hour shifts and a security team monitoring the hallways. On the night before the conference began, Maria made her move. She had discovered that Richards had a habit of ordering room service late in the evening, always requesting the same meal from the resort's 5-star restaurant: Swiss salmon with herb butter, wild rice, and steamed vegetables. He was a creature of habit, and habits could be exploited. Using her journalistic credentials, Maria had gained access to the resort's kitchen earlier that day, claiming she was writing a piece about the culinary preparations for such a high-profile event. She had palmed a small vial of concentrated shellfish extract from her equipment bag and memorized the layout of the food preparation area. At 10:30 p.m., she returned to the kitchen wearing the uniform of a member of the housekeeping staff. The kitchen was operating with a skeleton crew, and most of the preparation for the next day's events was already complete. Richard's room service order would be prepared by a single chef, as was the protocol for VIP guests. Maria waited in the shadows until the chef began preparing the salmon. When he stepped away from the preparation station to retrieve ingredients from the walk-in cooler, she moved quickly to the herb butter and introduced 3 drops of the shellfish extract. It was colorless, odorless, and would be completely undetectable until it was too late. The meal was delivered to Richard's suite at 11:15 p.m. Maria was in the stairwell, monitoring communications between the security team through equipment she had placed earlier. At 11:32 p.m., one of the bodyguards made an emergency call for medical assistance. By the time the paramedics arrived, Colonel Derek Richards was dead from anaphylactic shock. The autopsy would show that he had suffered a severe allergic reaction, likely from cross-contamination in the kitchen, an unfortunate accident during what should have been a routine diplomatic gathering. Maria was on a train to Munich before the body was even removed from the resort. She had successfully eliminated the man who had betrayed her, and she had been paid $7 million for the privilege. But as the Swiss countryside rolled past her window, she felt no satisfaction. Only a hollow emptiness, where revenge was supposed to provide closure. 3 days later, she was in a safe house in Berlin, when Marcus contacted her again. The client was impressed, he said over their encrypted connection. So impressed, in fact, that they want to offer you a permanent position. What kind of position? The kind that comes with official backing, unlimited resources, and targets that really deserve what's coming to them. The client wants to meet you in person. Who is the client, Marcus? There was a long pause before he answered. Admiral Sarah Chen, Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence. She's been building a team of operators who work outside official channels, handling problems that regular military and intelligence agencies can't touch. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard of Admiral Chen, a legendary figure in the intelligence community who was known for her unconventional methods and her fierce loyalty to the men and women who served under her. She knows who you really are, Maria, Marcus continued, using her real name for the first time in 3 years. She knows what happened that night in the warehouse, and she knows what you've been doing since then. She wants to offer you a chance to come back home and serve your country again, but this time with people who won't abandon you in the rain. The offer hung in the air between them like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. After 3 years of living in the shadows, moving from contract to contract, with no real purpose beyond survival, Maria was being offered a chance to be part of something bigger again. What would I be doing? She asked. Special operations. Black budget. Targets that pose a threat to national security, but can't be handled through conventional means. You would be part of a team of specialists, each with their own unique skills and backgrounds. Ex-military, some, others are former intelligence operatives, private contractors, even a few reformed criminals with useful skill sets. What they all have in common is that they've been betrayed or abandoned by the system they served, and Admiral Chen has given them a second chance to make a difference. Maria closed her eyes and thought about the past 3 years. The loneliness, the constant movement, the knowledge that her family still believed she was dead. She had survived, and she had gotten her revenge, but she had lost herself in the process. When does she want to meet? Maria asked finally. Tomorrow. There's a private airfield outside Berlin. A plane will be waiting for you at noon. As Maria packed her few possessions that night, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years. Hope. She was being offered a chance to serve again, to be part of a team, to have a mission beyond simple survival. The rain that had marked her abandonment 3 years ago had washed away her old life. Tomorrow, she would find out if Admiral Chen's offer could help her build a new one. The private jet touched down on a remote airstrip in Virginia at sunset, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Maria of tracer fire. She had spent the 8-hour flight from Berlin reading classified briefings that Admiral Chen had provided, learning about the organization she was being invited to join. Task Force Redemption was not an official military unit. It existed in the gray spaces between agencies, funded by black budgets, and operated by people who had been discarded by the conventional system. Their mission was simple: eliminate threats to national security that could not be addressed through official channels. Admiral Sarah Chen was waiting for her at the bottom of the aircraft stairs. She was smaller than Maria had expected, barely 5 feet tall. but her presence filled the space around her like a force field. Her hair was silver gray, pulled back in a precise bun, and her dark eyes missed nothing as they took Maria's measure. "Welcome home, Staff Sergeant Santos," the Admiral said, extending her hand. It was the first time anyone had used her real name and rank in 3 years, and Maria felt an unexpected surge of emotion at hearing them spoken aloud. "Ma'am," Maria replied, accepting the handshake and noting the Admiral's firm grip. "Walk with me," Admiral Chen said, leading her toward a waiting vehicle. "I imagine you have questions." "A few, ma'am. Start with the most important one." Maria didn't hesitate. "Why me? There are plenty of qualified snipers who haven't gone rogue for 3 years." Admiral Chen stopped walking and turned to face her directly. "Because those snipers haven't been tested the way you have. They haven't learned what it means to be completely on their own, to survive when everything they believed in has crumbled around them. They haven't had their loyalty to their country tested by betrayal from their own people." They resumed walking toward the unmarked SUV. "I've been tracking your activities since you disappeared," the Admiral continued. "Every contract, every target, every move you've made, you've had opportunities to work against American interests for substantially more money than you've been earning, but you've consistently refused those contracts. Despite everything that happened to you, you're still loyal to the ideals you swore to serve." The drive to the task force facility took them through dense Virginia woods on roads that didn't appear on any map. When they finally arrived, Maria saw a compound that looked like a cross between a military base and a corporate retreat. Modern buildings nestled among the trees, with training facilities, vehicle hangars, and communications arrays hidden from overhead surveillance. "This is where Redemption operates," Admiral Chen explained as they passed through multiple security checkpoints. "We have 47 operators currently active, plus support staff. Our success rate is 100%, and our existence is known to fewer than 24 people in the entire government." The briefing room where Admiral Chen led her was unlike any military facility Maria had ever seen. The walls were covered with high-resolution displays showing real-time intelligence feeds from around the world. Computer terminals hummed quietly, processing massive amounts of data, and the air carried the subtle tension of a place where life and death decisions were made every day. "Your first assignment," the Admiral said, activating one of the wall displays, "will be as team leader for Operation Crossfire." The display showed satellite imagery of a compound in Somalia, along with photographs of several individuals that Maria recognized from her intelligence briefings as high-value terrorists. 3 weeks ago, a Navy SEAL team was captured while conducting a reconnaissance mission near Mogadishu, Admiral Chen continued. 6 operators, including their commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez. The official position is that they were killed in action during an equipment malfunction. Maria studied the photographs more carefully. "But they're alive." "Very much so. They're being held in this compound by a warlord named Hassan al-Mansouri, who is planning to execute them on camera as a propaganda victory. The Somali government has denied any knowledge of the situation, and our diplomatic channels have been unsuccessful. Why not send in a larger rescue team? Because al-Mansouri has threatened to execute the hostages immediately if he detects any large-scale military operation in the area. We need a small, specialized team that can infiltrate the compound, eliminate the guards, and extract our people without triggering a massacre." Admiral Chen activated another display, showing detailed floor plans of the compound. "You'll be working with 3 other operators. Marcus Webb, who you already know, Sarah Kim, a former Army Ranger and explosives expert who was court-martialed for refusing an illegal order from her commanding officer, and Michael Torres, an ex-CIA operative who was burned by the agency when a mission went sideways. People like me," Maria observed. "Exactly like you. People who served with honor, were betrayed by the system, and deserve a second chance to make a difference." Over the next week, Maria worked with her new team to plan Operation Crossfire. It felt strange to be part of a unit again, after 3 years of working alone, but the chemistry between the 4 operators was remarkable. They had all been through similar experiences of abandonment and betrayal, and that shared trauma had forged an instant understanding between them. Marcus Webb would provide overwatch and communications. Sarah Kim would handle the explosive charges needed to breach the compound walls. Michael Torres would coordinate the extraction route and eliminate any pursuit. Maria would serve as team leader and provide precision elimination of high-value targets. The mission parameters were brutally simple: infiltrate the compound, eliminate all hostile forces, extract the SEAL team, and disappear without leaving any evidence of American involvement. No backup, no official support, and no possibility of extraction if things went wrong. 2 weeks later, Maria found herself lying on a rooftop in Mogadishu, watching the terrorist compound through her rifle scope. The familiar weight of the Barrett M82 in her hands felt like coming home after a long journey. The rain that had marked her abandonment 3 years ago had been replaced by the scorching heat of the Somali sun, but her hands were steady, and her mind was clear. "Overwatch in position," she whispered into her throat microphone. "Breacher ready," came Sarah Kim's voice from her position near the compound's east wall. "Extraction route clear," reported Michael Torres from his Overwatch position covering their escape path. "Communications package active," Marcus Webb confirmed from his mobile command post half a mile away. "You have 30 minutes before the next patrol sweep." Maria studied the compound through her scope. Intelligence had been correct about the guard positions, but there were more hostiles than expected. She counted at least 20 fighters, armed with AK-47 seconds and rocket-propelled grenades. The captured SEALs were being held in a concrete building at the center of the compound. "Dragon Lead, this is Overwatch," she said, using call signs that held special meaning for her. "I count 20+ hostiles. Recommend we proceed with infiltration." "Copy, Overwatch. Breacher, you are clear to make entry." The explosion that Sarah Kim triggered on the east wall was precisely calibrated to create maximum confusion while minimizing the risk to the hostages. As concrete dust filled the air and alarms began blaring throughout the compound, Maria began her deadly work. Through her scope, she tracked the first hostile as he ran toward the breach point. The .50 caliber round took him center mass, dropping him instantly. She shifted targets, finding a fighter who was pointing toward the building where the hostages were held. Another shot, another kill. "Hostile command post, 2nd floor, northeast corner," she reported, as she identified a figure coordinating the response through hand signals. The third shot shattered a window and eliminated the enemy commander. Without central coordination, the terrorists began to panic, running in different directions and firing wildly at shadows. "Overwatch, this is Dragon-led," came Maria's voice over the radio. "I'm moving to hostage building. Continue Overwatch and eliminate targets of opportunity." Maria had done something she had never done before. She was leaving her sniper position to join the close quarters battle. But this mission was different. These hostages were fellow Americans who had been abandoned by their command structure, just as she had been. She would not leave them behind. Moving like a ghost through the chaos of the compound, Maria reached the hostage building as Sarah Kim finished placing breaching charges on the entrance. The concrete building had been designed as a fortress, but Sarah's expertise with explosives turned its thick walls into shrapnel that eliminated the guards inside. The 6 captured SEALs were in worse shape than the intelligence reports had indicated. They had been beaten and starved, but their spirits were unbroken. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez looked up as Maria entered the room, and she saw recognition in his eyes despite her changed appearance. "Staff Sergeant Santos," he whispered in disbelief. "But you're supposed to be dead?" "I got better. Can you move?" "We can move." The extraction from the compound was a textbook operation. Michael Torres had positioned vehicles at multiple exit points, and his real-time intelligence allowed them to avoid enemy patrols as they moved through the city. By the time Somali government forces arrived to investigate the explosion, Maria's team and the rescued SEALs were already on a cargo plane heading for international waters. 3 days later, Maria was back at the Task Force Redemption Facility, sitting in the same briefing room where Admiral Chen had first explained her mission. The 6 rescued SEALs had been quietly returned to their families with cover stories about a classified mission that had been successfully completed. "The President has been briefed on the operation," Admiral Chen informed her. "Officially, it never happened. Unofficially, you've just saved 6 of America's finest warriors and eliminated a terrorist cell that was planning attacks on American interests throughout East Africa. What's next, ma'am? Admiral Chen activated the wall displays, showing new intelligence feeds from around the world. There are always threats, Staff Sergeant, always people who need to be rescued, and always enemies who need to be eliminated. The difference is that now you're part of a team that won't abandon you in the rain. Maria looked around the briefing room at her fellow operators. Marcus Webb was reviewing intelligence on a human trafficking network in Southeast Asia. Sarah Kim was studying blueprints for a terrorist weapons facility in Syria. Michael Torres was coordinating with sources inside a drug cartel that was funding Islamic extremists in South America. They were all people who had been discarded by the system they had served faithfully. They had all been betrayed, abandoned, and left to survive on their own. But Admiral Chen had given them something more valuable than money or recognition. She had given them a purpose and a team they could trust. "I'm ready for the next mission, ma'am," Maria said. Admiral Chen smiled, the first genuine expression of emotion Maria had seen from her. "Welcome home, Staff Sergeant. Welcome to Task Force Redemption." Outside the briefing room windows, storm clouds were gathering over the Virginia mountains. But Maria Santos was no longer afraid of the rain. She had learned that storms could wash away the old and make room for something new. She had been abandoned as a Marine sniper and had returned as the leader of America's most elite covert operations team. The people who had betrayed her 3 years ago would never know that their actions had inadvertently created one of the country's most effective weapons against its enemies. They had thrown her away like a broken tool, but she had been reforged in the fires of survival and emerged stronger than ever before. As she prepared for her next mission, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The rain that had marked her abandonment had also marked her rebirth. She was no longer just Maria Santos, the decorated Marine sniper who had been left to die in a hostile warehouse. She was now Dragon Lead, commander of Task Force Redemption's most elite operational unit. She led a team of operators who had all been abandoned by the system they had sworn to serve, and who had all found a new way to serve their country in the shadows where official forces could not operate. The woman who had been left to die in the rain had returned commanding the most dangerous and effective covert operations team in the American military. And she was just getting started.